You wake up on the 12th floor and the elevators are dead. The power failed overnight. Nobody knows when it's coming back. And everything you normally reach in 2 minutes is now 12 flights of stairs away. Water, groceries, medicine, your car, even taking the dog outside suddenly becomes a physical decision. And if those elevators stay down for 3 days, the problem changes faster than most high-rise residents expect. I'm going to show you what happens during those first 72 hours. What needs to already be upstairs, how to avoid exhausting yourself on unnecessary trips, and the mistake that can leave you effectively trapped even when your apartment itself is still safe. The first thing you need to understand is simple. When the power goes out in a high-rise, stop thinking horizontally. Think vertically. Maybe your building has backup power. Maybe one elevator keeps running for a while. Maybe management says everything will be restored soon. That's useful information, but it is not a preparedness plan. Emergency power systems vary, failures happen, and you should never build your survival strategy around the assumption that an elevator will remain available. So the moment an outage begins, ask yourself one question. What do I currently depend on that is somewhere below me? Maybe your emergency water is in the trunk of your car. Maybe extra medication is waiting at a pharmacy. Maybe pet food is stored in a basement locker. Maybe you plan to buy groceries tomorrow. On a normal day, none of that matters. During an extended outage, every floor between you and those supplies becomes friction. That leads to your first rule. Consolidate your movement. If conditions are safe and you decide you need something downstairs, don't make 5 separate trips. Make one deliberate trip with a list. Bring a backpack or bags you can actually carry on stairs. Know exactly what you're retrieving before you leave. Your priorities are simple: essential medication, water, critical power equipment, food, and sanitation supplies. Everything else can wait, because walking down 15 floors may feel easy. Walking back up 15 floors carrying 30 pounds does not. Do it multiple times and you start spending one of your most important emergency resources without realizing it: your physical energy. This is also why your apartment itself needs to contain the basics. Your car cannot be your emergency pantry. Your basement locker cannot be your only supply closet. And the store across the street cannot be your food reserve. If that kind of practical apartment preparedness is what you're looking for, subscribe. This channel is built around surviving emergencies when you don't have a basement, a garage, or unlimited storage space. We're working with the apartment you actually live in. Now let's move into the first major problem of day 1: water. Most people understand that water is important. What high-rise residents often underestimate is how heavy their water plan becomes when the elevator disappears. 1 gallon weighs a little over 8 pounds. A few gallons carried up 10 or 15 floors can turn a simple supply run into a serious physical task. That is why "I'll buy water when something happens" is a weak high-rise strategy. You need at least part of your supply already inside the apartment. That doesn't mean giant barrels taking over your living room. Smaller containers can fit under beds, inside closets, behind furniture, or in unused corners. The objective is not to make your apartment look like a bunker. The objective is to reduce how often you are forced to leave it. And there is another problem. Your faucet may still work when the outage begins, but that doesn't guarantee normal water service throughout a long emergency. High-rise water systems can depend on pumps and building infrastructure that may be affected by extended power loss. If the outage appears serious and your water is still running, use the opportunity to fill clean containers. Don't wait until the faucet is dry to start thinking about storage. Then think about sanitation. This is where a blackout can go from uncomfortable to miserable very quickly. Imagine day 2. The apartment is warmer than usual. Trash is accumulating. The toilet is no longer working the way you expected. Someone in the household is sick. Now imagine discovering that your heavy-duty trash bags, disposable gloves, and cleaning supplies are all downstairs in a storage unit. That is not a dramatic survival scenario. It is a very ordinary problem that becomes much harder because of 20 flights of stairs. Keep basic sanitation supplies inside the apartment. Heavy-duty bags, toilet paper, disposable gloves, disinfecting supplies, and whatever your household realistically needs. And never turn the stairwell into overflow storage. It may look convenient to leave supplies outside your door or temporarily stack something near the stairs, but that route may become critical for firefighters, emergency medical teams, neighbors, or evacuation. Keep it clear. By day 2, something else begins changing. The way you think about leaving your apartment. At first, you may walk downstairs because you want information, fresh air, or just a break from sitting inside. But every downward trip creates an upward trip. That sounds obvious until you are standing in the lobby realizing you still have 18 floors between you and your front door. Before you leave, ask yourself, do I actually need to go? Can I combine several tasks into one trip? And can I physically make it back upstairs if the elevator is still dead? That last question becomes especially important for older adults, people with injuries, parents carrying small children, or anyone managing a medical condition. If you depend on medication, mobility equipment, refrigerated medicine, oxygen equipment, or powered medical devices, your emergency plan needs to exist before the outage happens. Speak with your healthcare provider and building management about the safest options for your specific situation. Because high-rise preparedness is ultimately about redundancy. If one flashlight fails, you have another light source. If your phone battery drops, you have a charged power bank. If the faucet stops working, you already have water. If one method of preparing food becomes unavailable, you have another safe option. You don't need dozens of gadgets. You need to remove the failures that could shut your entire plan down. And this is where equipment matters, because a good apartment setup should solve specific problems without filling every closet with gear you never use. That's why I've put together a list of the exact survival gear I trust for apartment living in the description and pinned comment. It includes options for clean water, emergency lighting and backup power, core survival supplies, food preparedness, and even resources for practical off-grid projects. The goal isn't to buy everything at once. Look at the weakest point in your current setup and start there. Now let's move into day 3, because this is where the environment inside a high-rise begins to feel different. The problem is no longer only physical, it becomes social. People spend more time in hallways. Neighbors start exchanging information. Someone says the power will return tonight. Someone else heard it could take 3 more days. Another person says the water is about to stop. Rumors become their own form of emergency noise. Stay calm and verify what you can through building management, official emergency alerts, local authorities, or reliable broadcasts. And this is where low-profile preparedness starts to matter. You don't need to advertise what you own. Imagine walking through a crowded lobby carrying case after case of bottled water while telling everyone that you have 2 weeks of food upstairs. You have just turned private information into public information at exactly the moment people are becoming more anxious about supplies. Preparedness works better when it looks boring. Keep your supplies inside your unit. Keep your routine as normal as possible. Help people when you reasonably can, but you do not need to give the entire building an inventory of your apartment. And since we're talking about high-rises, tell me something in the comments. What floor do you live on? Because preparing on the 3rd floor and preparing on the 23rd floor are 2 very different problems. I'm curious how many people watching this are high enough that losing the elevator would completely change their daily routine. Now comes a problem people rarely associate with elevators: trash. By day 3, food packaging, pet waste, hygiene products, and spoiled food may be accumulating faster than normal building services can remove them. A single leaking trash bag in a hot hallway is annoying. Dozens of apartments doing the same thing can change the smell and sanitation of an entire floor. Keep your own waste sealed and controlled. Double bag anything likely to leak. Be careful with food waste. Keep your living area clean. Because once pests, odors, and contamination begin spreading through shared spaces, you are dealing with a second emergency created by the first one. Then there is temperature. In summer, upper floor apartments exposed to direct sunlight can become brutally hot when air conditioning disappears. Close blinds or curtains on the sunny side. Reduce heat-producing activities. Spend time in the coolest part of the apartment. Stay hydrated and pay particular attention to children, older adults, and anyone vulnerable to heat. In winter, shrink the space you are trying to keep comfortable. Close unused rooms. Gather in one area. Use layers, blankets, hats, and sleeping bags. But desperation creates dangerous shortcuts. Someone gets cold enough and starts thinking about bringing a charcoal grill inside. Someone decides an outdoor propane appliance should be fine near an open window. Someone runs a gasoline generator where fumes can enter the building. Don't. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and unforgiving. You can go from feeling uncomfortable to becoming confused and incapacitated without realizing what is happening. No amount of warmth is worth turning your apartment into a carbon monoxide trap. And now we get to the part of the high-rise that matters most if the situation changes suddenly. The stairwell. By day 3, assume it may be darker, busier, hotter, colder, and more exhausting than it was on day 1. You need a small evacuation bag near the door, not your entire stockpile, not a 60-pound backpack filled with everything you own. A bag you can actually carry down the stairs. It should cover essentials such as water, critical medication, identification, a flashlight, backup phone power, basic first aid, compact food, weather-appropriate clothing, and anything essential for children or pets. And keep real shoes ready. If a fire alarm sounds at 2 in the morning, that is not when you want to discover that the only footwear beside your bed is a pair of slippers. But here is the most important distinction in this entire video. An elevator outage does not automatically mean you should evacuate. Sometimes your apartment remains the safest place available, and unnecessarily entering the street during a larger emergency creates more risk than staying inside. But sheltering in place does not mean refusing to leave when the building itself becomes unsafe. You need 2 modes. Mode 1, stay. Mode 2, go. For stay mode, you need water, food, sanitation, lighting, communication, medication, temperature management, and enough backup power for your critical needs. For go mode, you need a manageable bag, a safe destination, a route, and the physical ability to reach ground level without depending on an elevator. That is the decision high-rise residents need to understand before an emergency begins. Because the real vertical trap is not simply living 20 floors above the street. It is having a preparedness plan where every important resource exists somewhere you can only reach by elevator. Your car is not your pantry. Your basement locker is not your emergency closet. The convenience store downstairs is not your food reserve. And the elevator is not guaranteed transportation. Every floor between you and the street adds friction. Every critical item stored somewhere else adds dependency. Every unnecessary trip you eliminate saves energy and gives you more options. You do not need to turn your apartment into a fortress. Start with 72 hours. Have water you don't need to carry upstairs after the outage begins. Have food you can safely prepare with limited utilities. Have essential medication and sanitation supplies available. Have dependable lighting and backup power. And have one bag ready for the moment when staying is no longer the safer option. Because when the elevator first stops, it feels like an inconvenience. 3 days later, you realize what it really was. A lifeline you never knew your entire routine depended on. Start fixing the weakest part of your plan today. The worst time to discover what you forgot upstairs is when you're standing in the lobby, looking at 20 flights of stairs.